Joe, you need to hit the. Are we live? I'm not getting us on the.
We should be live now. Just wanted to come in and say we finally hit the button. So
Okay, there you go.
I'll be back here
Oh,
self-flagellating for a
all of
while.
that stellar opening. I mean, the opening was the best part of
Do you
the
want to
show.
redo it? Do you want to
That was
restart?
just lost. It was just
Well, you could
lost.
play the video for everybody.
Okay, I could do that. Do you want to do that?
Sure.
All right, I'm going back in the dungeon. I'll see you later.
Bye.
Coming back on the air.
Johnny,
You're still afraid.
I'm not afraid.
There wasn't a sign of life left.
We've got to do something.
Why don't you just keep calm?
You're telling us we got to risk our lives just because somebody might need help.
Yeah, something like that. They dragged you out there and beat those things.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Haven't you had enough?
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Hey, we're here again.
Yay. Okay, so after a false start, which we won't talk about, we are back with the third episode of NIGHTCast. And so where are you,
Evans City
Gary?
Crickets.
You're in the cemetery?
Yeah, so these are Evans City Crickets you're hearing.
So,
I
and we
hope
still
they
have the Evans City-
sound as good. I hope they sound as good to the audience as they do, kind of right here. If they get too
They-
annoying,
they-
I'll put my windows up and we'll be okay.
They sounded better when we first came on. They seem to have lost their spark, but maybe it'll come back. So
All right, well, we'll fix it in the
anyway,
mix.
yeah, tonight we're here to talk about Image 10's relationship with Criterion and Janus Films, same company. And we have the producer of Criterion, Curtis Tsui, coming on a little bit later. But first, we'll discuss some of the history behind this relationship between the two companies and their distribution of Night of the Living Dead. So we have a few people watching. Don Fisher from Chicago says hello. John Scolari says, "Hey kids." And good. Bunch of other people. Nobody's commented yet though. But so we will jump into it.
It's because they can't hear the crickets.
Yeah, they can't hear the crickets. Or maybe they're not commenting because they want to hear the cricket. But so in our first episode, we kind of gave an overview of all the stuff that's been done with Night of the Living Dead to elevate the film, all of the organizations involved. I want to go over the first big relationship because it bears repeating, and that was these folks, the Museum of Modern Art, Katie Trainer, Raj Roy, several other folks there were the ones who first wanted to take in Night of the Living Dead into their archive, take the materials in, and then have the film restored into a state-of-the-art restoration, visual, sound, the whole 9 yards. And they did that restoration together with the Film Foundation, Margaret Bodie. And the Film Foundation arranged for the financing, which was provided by the George Lucas Family Trust and the Celeste Bartos Fund for Film Preservation. So that is the title card that appears on all versions of, well, the uh, newest restored 4K version of Night of the Living Dead, as well as this, which is Janus Films, the parent company of the Criterion Collection. And was the relationship with the Museum of Modern Art and Film Foundation, which led to, and the restoration of the film, which led to Image 10's relationship with Janus Films and the Criterion Collection release. And so, the folks, there's many good folks at the at Janus Films in the Criterion Collection that work with us and have worked on this property. Gary met and worked with the first two. You could probably speak about them, Jonathan Terrell and
yeah. First,
the other gentleman.
First, do you want me to do that now? First was
Yeah.
Peter Becker. Peter Becker is the head, and Peter Becker is the head of the Criterion division of the two companies, and Jonathan Terrell is the head of Janus Films. And so of course, originally we didn't even know that Janus Films was going to somehow play a part in all this. We didn't know anything. There was, I'll never forget the day that I got to take a cab down to their Park Avenue address, and I think they're on the 5th floor, and you go up and you walk into Criterion Films, the Criterion Collection here. And of course it was just a buzz, and Peter came and met me and introduced me, and everybody was, oh, Night of the Living Dead. It was a really wonderful buzz within the place, and people were saying, Night of the Living Dead, I thought there were copyright problems. And Peter just would shake his head and keep charging on. He wasn't going to let copyright problems be an issue for him, and that made me feel really good. That right from the top, right from the beginning, the top of the organization was behind doing this, and the copyright issue was not the predominant issue by any stretch of the imagination, because they also know they're in the restoration business as well. Criterion is. They restore a lot of their own films, and they of course knew the status of the copyright would be, that we have one because of the restoration, and the work done on that would allow us to have a new copyright. So that just was all a wonderful ball of fun, and then we got to had a chat, and then we started later started seeing contracts and started seeing what this was going to all turn into. But I remember it's really kind of weird, because the one very clear thing that I remember was Peter, because I knew it was but our property that we were dealing with here. He said, we're going to put our best producer on this. And that really, it brightened my day, because again, here's another indication that the best is treating our film as the best. And Curtis was always obviously the gentleman that they were referring to. And I got to meet him just in a flurry of other department heads and people that day. I got to meet him personally. But then we got down to the nitty gritty, and I think he was amazingly surprised, because he didn't know we had a Jim Cirinella, that could answer just about every historical question that the man. Of course, now we have John Bullough, so we we
Yeah,
are.
who's answering questions that nobody actually even has. So, questions we didn't know were questions yet. So um, yeah,
so
that may have been more of a bane that there was a me to harass Curtis, but we got
well,
through it.
yeah, no, it worked perfectly. And I don't know if now, I'd rather wait till he comes because I do have a little anecdotal thing that had me for a couple of minutes saying, how can this be the best producer? This is the best piece of information. This was about something that we got to him thinking that it would be really, really good on the Blu-ray. And he just basically shat upon it and said no. But the interesting thing was that was the start of understanding why the Criterion Collection is different from all other home video release companies. They think about films in a much different manner than your average, your average home distributor is going to have, they have a gallery. We didn't have a gallery, of photos. We could have filled a gallery really
Well,
nicely.
we could have filled the gallery, but
Yeah, but they didn't want a
they
gallery.
wanted to go another way. Well, backing it up for a second, we should explain why in our young years there of working on this, kind of naive years, why we decided on the Criterion Collection, why that was the goal for home video for
Because
this
we
film.
couldn't think of one that was bigger or that was
Yeah,
better or that
also,
had a better reputation. I mean, those were the general areas. It was,
I
it's
mean, it
what
didn't.
anybody that was going into home release would dream of. That
Yeah,
was it. It was the dream company.
I mean, the fans had, for years, fans were saying, that would be the ultimate to have Night of the Living Dead there. Not that all of the previous licensees, distribution companies were terrible, but at the time this was being worked on, there was no Anchor Bay. Anchor Bay, which was, previously very good to Night of the Living Dead, in the, I would say, like the mid to late 90s. Those were legitimate releases. Well, there was no Anchor Bay anymore. They had moved on to other things. I think it became Stars or something else, and they weren't doing those you know um, genre, horror genre, science fiction genre, 60s and 70s films anymore. Not that we would have stayed there wanted to stay there with the property anyway. The thing that I always said was, Night of the Living Dead, a film that up until the last few years had legal issues, needed to always be available and in everybody's face. You needed to have the best version put forward all the time. And the previous license to this was definitely not that. And that's
Well,
what
they
the
were
company that doesn't
commodities. The
exist
previous
anymore.
the previous two restorations were Night of the Living Dead was a commodity. It was being dealt and brokered to do other deals and make other things happen. Particularly, particularly with the Weinsteins. That, and so it was never a pure deal. This was the first time it was a pure deal for Night of the Living Dead. No other bullshit around it. And with it, to me, with a company who every one of the films in their collection is part of their company. Um, you know, and that's their mentality of how they present it. And I'd rather let maybe Curtis talk a little more definitively about that, because he could be more articulate about it and probably more accurate. But it's a philosophy. It's something that they've been doing since the beginning of creation. They've been doing it the exact same way, and they have developed a group of people that likes the way they do it. And so if you're a collector, and anybody that has any amount of films from the Criterion Collection, you're going to have them all. You want and the real collectors have every number that they've ever put out, and that's the point of pride. They may never even watch Night of the Living Dead, but I can't remember. Do you remember what number it is? I'm sure Curtis will remember what number.
Well, it's on there. What is it? I can't see that well.
Well, I'm on a
I don't know
phone,
if I can,
so forget about
if I
it.
can zoom it in, but I can't. No, I can't. But anyway, oh, there it is. It's no, that is not the number. That's the year. So there you go. I'll be quiet about that now. But essentially, yeah, that was the plan, was for us to get this property to a distributor where it's elevating the film among other great films, not just to a company that specializes in horror or science fiction genre films, but a company that's going to treat it like the important film that it is, which they have. And we started off with a Blu-ray release, a DVD release simultaneously, and eventually they've moved up to a 4K UHD release. And also, we've worked with another important person at Criterion, Fumiko Takagi. She's the one responsible for getting Night of the Living Dead out of just not just in the USA territory, but out into the rest of the world. And has
she's let me just say before we go, so we know who she is. There are three executive producers, and she's the third executive producer. So we, it's a pretty rare occasion that, and they all work, very much in their different departments and work very much different on different things within the realm of their business. So we're quite privileged that actually we got to deal with all three of the principals in the distribution of the film. So again,
Image 10 is a bit of a handful. We understand that, and we keep pushing.
We pride in it.
Well, but we also keep pushing. What is normally done. This was not in Criterion's and Janus Films' regular purview to be moving the film from country to country, but they took that
at the
task
time.
on.
I mean, in the beginning, our deal with them was only for U.S., UK, Ireland, and Canada. Right. Those were the only countries because they're not that type of distributor. They don't distribute all over the world to other films. We had a lot of interesting situations that led up to that, to having them sort of expand their their horizons on whether or not they would do this. And I mean, it's been nice. We've got into a few countries, and it's nice to always know that it's there. And if somebody says, "Oh, well, I don't know, what about Australia?" I mean, Australia in a way to me seems like one of the most obvious places we should go next or could go next, because it's an American speaking country or English speaking country. It doesn't require any dubbing or subtitling or anything else. And you know what, we'll get to it. It just is something that, us and Australia, Night of the Living Dead is big in Australia. So that's just, at some point in time that'll come up and something will happen. And that's the point with having connections to people who are in high places in the industry that you're trying to fulfill yourself in. It's like all of a sudden the bells click. Oh, well, of course we know those people at blah blah blah. We see them at every festival that's done all over the country, all over the world. So they've established these relationships with people, and so it became kind of easy to just plug it into a couple of other countries, which ended up being four other countries in the end.
Well, yeah,
So
Japan, France, Italy, Germany. I think France was piggybacked on the
right, Studio
the
Canal,
Germany,
right?
yeah, the Studio Canal release, which I believe was Germany. There was a lot of companies.
And there you go.
involved in all of these.
Here we are doing sub licenses to someone like Studio Canal, which of course is,
But it's also like you were saying, it's not just sub-licensing and throwing it out there. The people at Criterion not only have set these foreign licenses up for the film, but they make sure that it's taken care of. The film is being taken care of well. This isn't the first time Night of the Living Dead's been out and has been licensed abroad, outside of the USA. And in a lot of cases, nobody knew what was going on with those previous. Well, look, until
still don't some of them.
Well, until this 4K restoration, and then that going to first Blu-ray and DVD, and then to 4K via Criterion. The best Blu-ray release was the HappyNet version. Where the heck did they get that? But it is the previous licensed version. Somebody made a deal somewhere, and again, it's just being thrown out like a commodity, and it's not really being, or just another title, and it's not really being dealt with on a more professional basis, where which is what this film needs, and a little bit more protection from it being misused. So as we were saying, Night of the Living Dead has had this, its ultimate home video release through Criterion. And another area that we weren't really banking on as administrators of Image 10 when this was all being done was streaming, which even just in the 7 years that Night of the Living Dead has been on home video, streaming has just blown up. And Criterion's the company that has been able to go with that change in how movies are watched and distributed. And so we have Night of the Living Dead's on the Criterion channel. There's a lot of great content, Night of the Living Dead related content on the Criterion channel. This is some of the extras and bonus material that appears on the physical media disc, but now people can see it there. Night of the Living Dead's also gone to Max, which was previously HBO Max, but is now just Max, and that's really helped to eliminate a lot of the unlicensed or bad quality versions that are out there. So everybody's basically sticking with the best quality version, just because it's available. And that was always our plan in going to a company like Janus Criterion.
Well, just to that point too. I mean, that philosophy that really germinated almost back from, um, Jim and I were all of a sudden faced with, there's all these bootleg T-shirts out there. How are we gonna control this? How are we gonna wrangle this? How we don't have the legal resources to, get attorneys to write down takedown orders for all of this stuff. And well, a bunch of things happened to that end. Fortunately, we did have Mr. Joe Senna, who did in fact own the trademarks on for T-shirts and action figures, who was always holding those trademarks as he told us for the time when we were ready to, take them back and or take them from him and actually use them. So that was a really that was you know if we could do a timeline, of all the important factors that happened in the rebirth of Night of the Living Dead, that was certainly a key one because it gave us some leg to stand on. You know, and that's a whole other conversation and a whole other show. But um, Criterion helped us to build that base, by the fact that, and they gave us, well, and again, the concept, well, I got off on the tangent about T-shirts, is it was that unless we produce something that's better than what these bootleggers are doing and make it known to everybody that this is the real deal and it's authorized, and yes, when Karen Cooper's image is on a T-shirt, she gets paid for that, and Ben and Johnny and everybody else, that's the new Image 10. That's how we handle things now. And so it just followed through. We had an incident at one point in time. Someone was actually selling bootleg copies of the Blu-ray and at a convention. And it was like, we were like, oh my God, well, the world is coming to an end. So somebody's bootlegging, our prize. And it was a very wonderful and gentle moment, I thought, but we went running to Jonathan Terrell at that time, who we were dealing with, and he just said, you know what, guys, over the years, basically our philosophy about all that stuff is we don't care. We don't care that they're selling these out of their trunk. What we care about is that we give the ultimate product that people want to buy, and if they do buy this bootleg from, from this guy out of his trunk or at a convention somewhere, they're still going to buy the Criterion version. And I think that's exactly what, Jim was talking about. We had a lot of interesting versions that came out around the 50th anniversary claiming to be remastered and so on and so forth. And you know what? You just look 2 months later and they're on Amazon for $2.98. They're just trying to liquidate them and and get them out of there, off their shelves. So that I think becomes a real significant point to why we would want to go with Criterion and why it was, and Janus. And well, the other bonus I thought you were going to mention was that we really hadn't had any thought about theatrical distribution of the film. And that was a pleasant surprise for us,
Well, we never thought that's really not the goal. That's not, that tends to not be the.
No, but it's the icing.
Yeah, exactly. It's another unintended benefit. But where of course, fans want to see the movie in theaters, and they want to see any movie in theaters that they're not normally able to see on a big screen. that's all great. That again, though, wasn't one of our main things to show Night of the Living Dead in theater. It's not a. It's just not part
No,
of
we weren't
the
looking
film
for
on-
like a redistribution of the film in thousands of theaters. That
I
wasn't
mean,
it
it's
at
great
all.
that it can have that, and we constantly get the requests for it, or constantly have to kind of elbow our way into certain screenings or that are being advertised and saying, hey, you're supposed to be licensing it from over here. And that brings up two other people at Criterion that work with us who we should mention, which is Brett Charlo, who we're constantly calling with legal issues that he's very patient and helps us deal with, as well as Brian Bolovarak. I don't know if I said his name right. We call him Brian, or Brian B, but Brian's the gentleman who handles the actual distribution into cinemas of or theatrical screenings of Night of the Living Dead. So whenever we have one of these errant screenings pop up, we're usually sending them over to Brian, and he takes care of it. But we should bring our guest on.
Oh, is he here?
Yep,
Yes.
he's been waiting for a while. So
No, come on, get him on.
We talked way past his bringing him on, but Curtis Tsui is the producer at Criterion. He's one of the best producers I ever worked with. Hey, Curtis.
Curtis! It's the first time I'm seeing you in ages.
A long time. I feel like it was before the pandemic. The last time I might have spoken
it was way before the
pandemic. Yeah. Jim, I've been in touch with.
You've had many more, hookups with Jim for
definitely
other projects and other things. But you and I haven't seen one another probably in 3 years. 4 years,
Yeah, definitely. But it's good to see you. And maybe I was noticing some messages going by, but the spine number is 909 for the disc.
909.
I have to look that up. I do not have that information right off the top of my head. Yeah.
Well, several of our fans got that. Curtis, I just want to just mention your mic is a little loud.
It's a little loud. Okay.
Bring the volume down a little bit.
Okay.
Good. As I said, I've done extras work for many of the home video labels. I won't mention them all, but Curtis is easily the best producer I've ever worked with. He makes my work look way better than it is. So I appreciate that. We worked on a couple things together besides Night of the Living Dead. Worked on the Godzilla Showa era box set that they did, which is fantastic. And what I like about Curtis is he's not one of these producers who says, well, we can't do that. He says, what do you need to do that? So, that's the best part about working with him. There's nothing, if it's a good idea, we go for it and we get it done.
Well, I appreciate you saying it that way. I will say that I think there are definitely times when I do end up having to. I actually do have to say we can't do that. There are certainly a lot of times budgetary considerations to take care of and things like that. But for the most part, really, when we set out to do a project, we try to assess, what's been out there before. What the possibilities are with an audience, particularly, with something like Night of the Living Dead or a number of the other titles I work on, the Godzilla titles, a lot of the martial arts films, there are these really diehard built-in fan bases. And we try to address things that will make them happy, but also make brand new viewers happy and give those brand new viewers a certain amount of context as well. So there's a kind of balancing act we try to do with every one of these releases, and it can make things a little tricky. Sometimes you do on occasion have to say no. because there are certain spatial limitations on discs. It depends on how many discs we're willing to go to. A lot of those numbers are determined, by people besides myself in relation to how far it goes. But in the case of Night of the Living Dead, it was pretty much acknowledged that this was something where it had been out, honestly, in so many editions and so many really great editions. I still have my Elite Laserdisc, I think that Elite Laserdisc is great. So it was about building upon that and giving perspectives that perhaps weren't available in any other edition. And a lot of that for Night of the Living Dead, I think, is, also for our audience, is really establishing what made that movie so important in a storytelling and kind of like film syntax way, because it is so modern in its storytelling. And it's kind of amazing that when you end up hearing is you guys were almost, just working as best as you knew from your commercial production and the tools that you had, but out of those, let's call them quote unquote limitations, came this incredible work of art. And it's a work of art that continues to inspire so many people. And I think that was something that we really had to get across too, with some of these filmmaker testimonials and things like that were on there, about what that long range impact was. It isn't just something that haunts convention circuits or something like that. It is something that has influenced Academy Award winners.
My question is, when you get a movie like Night of the Living Dead, it's an important American film, but at the same time, it's this great exploitation title.
Yeah.
What's the approach with, what's immediately your approach with something like that?
Well, I would have to say that it kind of differs in every single case. Like, I think, for example, a film like Equinox, the Jack Woods / Dennis Muren film, that was from the 70s, where it was originally something that Dennis Muren and his friends were working on as just a passion project. And then when it was bought by producer Jack Harris, it became something else, perhaps even more exploitative. I think in that case, you stay on the story of who these young filmmakers were and where they ended up going from there. But it never really, let's face it, it pretty much stays firmly within those kind of exploitation roots. Whereas something like Night of the Living Dead, it may have origins within that kind of movie making for sure. Something where it's just like, okay, this is a type of movie that's getting people into theaters to see them. It is something that, is likely to end up generating some revenue. How do we do it? But then within that framework, it's very clear that over time, there's been so much that's been absolutely important about this movie beyond that exploitation aspect, in relation to the artistry of it, the talent who went on to work on other things, all those details. And another key aspect of this release was that, yes, we do know that George Romero ended up going on to be, this director of a great deal of importance and a very recognizable name, but it was very clear that this was a very collaborative effort at the time, and we wanted to make sure that we could really celebrate that collaborative effort and give everyone some attention that they deserved. It wasn't just a director's film, and because all of you were capable of doing the exact same things in a lot of ways, from having trained yourselves that way. You were all able to edit, to shoot, to block. So that was another important thing to kind of get across to viewers. I know that we live in a kind of auteurist mindset a lot of times within film, where it's just like the director is the commanding voice. And, I understand where that comes from, but at the same time, there are all these other people working on there. And I think we really had to illustrate that all that it was this perfect storm of elements of a team of creatives behind the camera, in front of the camera, that made this movie what it was. And, I think that might be something that previous releases, even if they were trying to do it, I think they probably were, couldn't quite do it. I mean, Laserdisc was a very limiting format in a lot of ways. That's why audio commentaries were given so much primacy. So for something like that, now that we are able to use a lot more video, in addition to audio commentaries, we were able to explore a lot of other areas that perhaps weren't on other editions. I definitely don't want to suggest that previous editions weren't trying. I don't think anybody doesn't try to do good work, or at least I'd like to believe that. I think that everybody does want to do right by something, so we just try to do the best we can.
Well, let me just to that point though. Let me just say, all of your comments are predicated on this company that you work for. This company that has a much bigger image than what some of these others have, and that's because you do pay attention to those details, and you even know that those details exist. But I think my feeling is that these details exist because of the culture that you're putting them into. Not only are you putting them into the hands of fans that want to see them, but you're also putting them into your collectors' shelves, and people that pride themselves in having every one of the numbers in your volume, or volume in your collection. So I think that I think you have to take some credit for the fact that it's all about the whole institution. And certainly you being in the position that you're in are a key part of that institution.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And yes, I would definitely say that this is true. I do think that, when I started watching Laserdisc, when I saw the Criterion label, when I was at university, in college, at the college library, if I saw the Criterion Laserdisc of Taxi Driver, I watched that, Blade Runner, what have you. It always meant that there was going to be some kind of appreciation in relation to trying to be faithful to what the filmmakers wanted in the visual quality of what we were seeing. And then there was also a great deal of thought put into the context for the supplemental material so that it wasn't all kind of one-sided in relation to what we were getting. It was really trying to give you a balance, a very broad balance of ways you could approach a film and look at it. It's I guess I'll be.
I have to tell my one story that involved Curtis, and we were. It was information gathering time, which went in many different directions, and we were just trying to look and find the pieces that were going to make this Blu-ray something special. And I found something. You got to put Curtis up too. Put Curtis's picture up, please. I need to see his face to see if he remembers this situation. But anyway, I had found
this was Phil Heinzman or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe you remember it.
Continue with the story.
We had a fan had created this wonderful little film of Bill Heinzman's routine. And Bill Heinzman had a routine at every convention he went to. And on Saturdays, he would go downstairs, have breakfast, come upstairs, and put his makeup on, and he would be zombie number one for all of Saturday. And a friend of his and a photographer and someone we got to know better later, um, got a hold of me and said, "Hey, I have this film of Bill. You might want to see it, and it might be. It's really very interesting that how this actor after 40 years still does this every Saturday in this routine, and how." And so I'm all excited, and I get it, and I send it to Curtis, and he goes, I can't remember what your exact words were, but it was basically, this is really, really great, but I don't think we're interested.
I hope I wasn't rude about it in any way, but because I don't remember what my response was. It's just I do remember you bringing that to me. That's why when you started telling your story, I was like, I wonder if it's the Heinzman thing.
But in the end, I understood your point, and your point at the time was, this is a film about Bill Heinzman, and you were trying to, I think, reach a broader field and a broader range of people. And this was one little incident that this particular actor did, and it didn't quite have the gravity that you wanted to have it. But I was just like, what the fuck is he talking about? This is great.
And listen, I understand why you were thinking that way, because it is something where it's certainly not that I don't think that there would have been an audience for that. I do. I definitely think, in particular, the diehard fans would love to have seen it there. Right. But it's the type of thing that I think if someone were completely unfamiliar and you're trying to get them to this movie and understand what made it so important, if they fell on that, they would just be kind of like, why am I getting this? And without understanding what Bill Heinzman has meant to the people who have grown up with this movie and lived it for so long and been a part of it, where that kind of emotional impact is a completely different level. So yeah, that was the thing. I felt it was something that could be appreciated by some, but not enough of the audience that we're really hoping to really broaden this with, and to really say, hey, listen, this is not just that movie that played at 1 a.m. on some random local station in a really terrible way. This is a real work of art, and you have to consider it as such. And listen, I love children.
It didn't become popular because it's public domain, which is the typical. This is why this is why I say Curtis is the best producer I ever worked with, and not Harry. But to be fair, Heinzman, Bill Heinzman had passed away long before this was a thing. But we did get him included within the Ghoul extras piece.
Yeah, that you
we have a lot of folks who had passed away by that point. We were able to get them in there, so that was a good thing.
No, and it is nice, and I'm glad that, and I think within the context of the way that was presented, I think that was something where for the audience that we have, it's something that's a lot more immediately accessible in terms of why you're watching it and what you're taking away, in relation to the people that you're spending time.
That's what you conveyed to me at the time, and even though I thought you were crazy, I got it. I understood what you were talking about, and later, when the thing was finished, appreciated it, and so always, look, hey, criticism can be the best possible thing for a project, or I shouldn't say use criticism in that way. Critical attention, it can't all be in there, because if it is, because even if that film was in there, it would have taken it just a slightly different direction. than where the overall production was taking it. And that's what I thought you had your eye on the ball. You knew from beginning, middle to end what the extras needed to be, and how they would flow, and how Del Toro ended up, working in there and being so powerful. And, all the interviews, really. I mean, I don't, I think mine might have been the weakest of them all. I like to read.
No, not at all. No, it was, I think they were all great. I was really happy with everything because I think as a totality, you really get a beautiful picture of how you all work together to create this masterpiece. Frankly, it's something that it's astonishing that you can end up looking at a movie that has been made so many years ago. I mean, it's not. They're certainly older films, but that was made at this point in time, and yet it still feels as modern in terms of its filmmaking language and its tone and sensibility as anything you're likely to see. If not more so, because some of the stuff that we end up seeing, don't want to belittle everything we're seeing now, but there's a lot more art in relation to what I'm seeing there than a lot of what I end up seeing elsewhere in terms of contemporary movie making.
I have a question about because with you dealing with so many other genres of film, mm-hmm. and over so many different eras of film, has there ever been another situation where basically commercial filmmakers, made that jump from commercials to doing a feature film and it becoming so important? Now, there are a few, such as and films that are in the Criterion Collection, such as Carnival of Souls. Those were commercial filmmakers, and the same with for some reason I'm drawing a blank because I'm thinking Jack Harris, but The Blob, the director was like a commercial or industrial filmmaker or religious filmmaker, and made that jump to exploitation, features. And so it tended to be happening in there. I mean, it makes sense that you're making a low budget film, you're trying to get it seen. So obviously the money and the impetus, maybe from an outside producer or even just among your group, is to make a horror movie or a movie. But it seems that later, this kind of thing became where they, became more of the norm, where they were kind of fielding directors from either music videos or commercials, such as Ridley Scott,
Adrian Lyne, those folks. There might be some outliers when you start looking in other countries. Like I worked on early films, not the very first ones, I don't think, by a director named Ermanno Olmi in Italy. These were films from the 70s, like Il Posto, The Job is the original title, and it's kind of like what you would imagine with Italian neorealism. It's, although still very much constructed fiction, and he came from an industrial filmmaking background as well. And I think when you look at it, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of work, but it's the type of thing where I think you see the link between that kind of industrial filmmaking, which is kind of like almost like documentary in a way, with where he would end up going into some of these feature films that had kind of a documentary style. But then there was an outlier that was paired with a post called The Fiancés, the I Fidanzati. And that movie had the most beautiful modern editing. It had a completely different style than what I was seeing in Il Posto. And it was kind of great because these movies were kind of contemporaries of each other, and yet you can end up seeing that, okay, here's this filmmaker, he comes from these industrial backgrounds, and then you see the movie that, plays like what we would imagine Italian neorealist films would end up being. And then you have this other one where it's very, very stylized, very different. So that was one of the experiences I've had with something along those lines. But you have, around 8 producers now. I think we've rotated around 10 at other times in the company's history, and between all of us, we've all worked on very, very, very different projects. So other producers may have worked more on, the projects with directors who were from commercials and industrials than me. Like you mentioned, Carnival of Souls. That's one of the more senior producers. One of her jobs was that one.
I just remember at the time you had that this project was being worked on, these discs were being worked on. You had a question for me coming from some of the other folks who were producing another extra, which was about George Romero's style, and particularly that their thesis was that every frame of this film is like a painting.
Right.
And your question was, do you think George had his editing style before Night of the Living Dead, or is this something that he developed with Night of the Living Dead?
Yeah.
And I think I asked you for an example, and you sent me, one of the commercials, the Image 10 commercials, and there was the Night of the Living Dead style right there, and that was
right.
the answer. It was George filming
from day one.
From every conceivable angle that he could.
It was like a lawnmower commercial, wasn't it? Or a beverage where somebody was mowing the lawn.
Yeah, it was a beer commercial that he filmed the establishing idea of the guy taking his lawnmower out from every angle that you could. Again, it was just his style. He liked to say that he'd rather have 100 really bad shots or mediocre shots than one really good shot, because there's only one way to cut one really good shot. So, and that's overall, that's been the. Well, if you get into analyzing Night of the Living Dead, that's always been one of the hardest things to pinpoint what's happening in George's mind, because he didn't storyboard anything. And it's like he just figured out, I need all these different shots, and then let me see what I can do with it later. And he would just pull things, even that were mistakes, but he'd throw them in because it created a certain feeling that he wanted, to get across in a scene or a shot, and so forth. You were going to say, Gary?
But remember, George from his very beginning thought like a filmmaker, not like a commercial maker. I mean, all of his, all of his information, was on feature films, that developed this style and this thinking. So I don't think, and so I think the commercial end of George benefited from, all this stuff that he was even doing as a kid. And so in George's case, the two kind of blended together very well, but because he didn't make it initially as a feature filmmaker, but he did make it as a commercial film director. So that's where his first, audience was. But I think his mentality was always that of a bigger filmmaker in everything he did.
So I want to ask,
anyway.
I know this isn't Curtis's project, but Night of the Living Dead's being included in the Criterion Collection 40th anniversary box.
Yep.
And we've got this was part of what Gary and I were talking about, is, why we were excited, that the Museum of Modern Art, Film Foundation, and ultimately Janus Films and the Criterion Collection, we're excited about Night of the Living Dead because we see it as elevating the film among other great films, all of which are in this. We're very happy that it's the one George Romero film within all these great other works from all over the world.
Well, I should also stress to you that the reason why it's in there, that particular set, if you're familiar at all with our closet videos of people coming in and taking taking discs. A lot of these pics were also done outside of closet videos, but what's represented in that set, from what I understand, are the most popular pics. So these are the ones that when guests come, they say, "Oh gosh, could I get a copy of X film?" You know, Night of the Living Dead is one of them. So that is why it's there. It just shows what the appeal of this movie is, the extent of it. You know, how often people come in and are excited to find that movie on our shelves.
And I believe it was Matthew Modine.
Well, we certainly are.
Who picked Night of the Living Dead, and that's or at least he's the representative.
Well, he's a representative quote, but they, you know, it wouldn't be in that set if multiple people had not picked it over time. So yeah, that's I think that was the litmus test that would end up being the kind of deciding factor of what would be in that set, as opposed to something where we were picking or anything of that sort.
Gary, you had a question there from John Scolari, which was, did you get to plunder the Criterion closet?
Oh, yes.
Gary.
Oh, yes. Oh.
Do you remember what titles you
Yes.
picked?
You know, I don't, but I've been going through this major cleaning of my home, and I've at least identified the bag. I haven't looked in the bag yet. It's hard to even say. You know, first of all, the fact that I was even in that room for a poor boy from Pittsburgh. You know, just happened in their career, happened to make this amazing movie and some other ones. I was utterly smitten by the fact that I was even in the room. And then, you know, what you really want to do is just take a copy of everything that's in there. You know, and then you say, well, I can't do that. I have to be discreet about this. I mean, I can't literally just take 45, you know, copies out of here. And so, but it's going to be interesting. That can be another, another Nightcast episode. I'll unveil my picks from the Criterion closet. I was just happy. Wow, I was getting the bag, you know, that was like a big deal.
Yeah, I think I still have my Criterion. I have my Criterion tote bag. To me, that was even more special than you know, getting to pick a film or anything like that. I just wanted the tote bag.
Yeah, it's because you were never in the room, Jim. If you ever went in that room, you'd change your tune.
I've seen it. They let me, you know, they said if you want to go in there, but I said no, that should be reserved.
Yeah, but you didn't get a
actual,
pass key, did you?
Actual famous people.
I think
it's a wonderful environment. You know what? And it's a funny thing, and I probably got to know you a little deeper, Curtis, than, you know, pretty much anyone. I mean, maybe Peter. You know, I had a lot of, you know, connection with Peter at the time, but I just always got a good vibe from you that you were grounded in the real deal, you know, and that all of the, you know, sometimes, you know, people get into these environments of this enormous consciousness about a project that's being worked on and kind of choke up, you know, and I don't think there was ever a minute that you choked up. And we should have yes, thank you, Joe. You know, and it is a bit, I mean, I remember the art, for instance, you know, the creation of the cover art, you know, and it was like exactly, you know, and it was well, and there and the trailer you guys cut, there were all these little wonderful Easter eggs for us, you know, to finally get to see how, our precious little film was going to actually, get displayed. And that was just the wonderful thing about Criterion. And I'm sure there was animosity between fellow workers at times, this, that, and the other thing. But I always got the feeling when I was there that this was a place of kind of special harmony. I mean, the workers in that office, I think, knew they were special, that they were working in that office, and probably pretty proud of it, and all the rest that goes with it. You're working for the best. How can you not feel good about it?
Yeah.
And then
I've
and then it just spreads among the group. And so, and I'm sure, they're okay. Somebody's in here with Peter. We should be nice to them. I'm sure a lot of that was part of it. But I worked in bigger organizations, and I know sometimes you just can't hide it when someone is not happy. And I always felt that the bulk of the people at Criterion are happy.
no, absolutely, and I think
That's a little.
this movie also gave us a really special situation, which we don't always end up having, which is that we get to really work with the people who made the film. I think it's a little more frequent now as we're doing discs that are for newer films. So at this point, we've collaborated with living filmmakers a bit more. But when you end up looking at a lot of our library, whether it's Francois Truffaut or Akira Kurosawa, Ishiro Honda, Federico Fellini, they're just not with us. So a lot of times we have to use our best judgment in relation to what we think we're doing right by that particular talent. Whereas in this case, we could really talk to everyone, and to know that we were making the people who made this work happy. It was a major plus. It was something that we don't always get to do, and I think it means a lot to everyone when we end up getting a chance to do that, because it's part of film history.
We should end it right here.
Yeah.
I think we're done. Cut it off. It's the Mutual Admiration Society. But you know what? But that is truth, and that is the point. It's all about respect, and I think that one of the best things that our two organizations have is respect for one another. And that respect started from the very beginning, and it continues to this very podcast.
Absolutely.
I respect you for what you did, and I respect Peter, and I respect all of you, because you work hard to do something special. That's what we wanted, and that's what we got. And what else can you say?
Yeah, and
We're lucky. We're both
Curtis
lucky to have found one another.
yeah, definitely.
I respect Curtis for waiting till the very last. I think it was hour. My extra was the very last thing.
I remember, yes.
And he was just very calmly messaging me saying, "Jim, come on." I mean, because we were kind of naive back then, but this is the first time. Yeah, but this is the first time like any kind of work was going through quality control. You have your whole quality control group of people, and they were like, "What is this crap that we just got sent?" They're flagging things here and there, and I had to fix it. But whatever, it was good, and look, at the end of the day, at the very least, Gary and I feel vindicated, because here we still are. Night of the Living Dead is still an important title at Criterion, and that's what we always said. That's the reason why we wanted to go with the company, or at least give the film a shot with a company of this level, because it's very important that it's always out there in the public, and it's accessible, and this particular version of it is out there, and but it's not only just remained accessible, it's exceeded certainly our expectations and seems to keep finding new customers for it. So, which I'm sure, I've seen some of the grumbling from the old customers saying, why do we need a 40 disc box set or a 40 title box set? Because if you're a Criterion diehard, of course you have a lot of those films already. But this is going to, there's a lot of films in that box set that I don't have. It's certainly up, my alley, and it's up a lot of, you know, um, film lovers' alley. Maybe people who, younger folks who just stream everything. And
No, absolutely. I mean, we're all always discovering something new,
yeah,
even if it's something that's been around for a while. I mean, none of us are capable of seeing every single thing. So if and we do want to end up engaging newer cinephiles. There are a lot of newer film fans coming in. So that's definitely one of the groups that would find something like that appealing.
right. So great. Um,
But yeah, thank you
We've
guys.
run over time, by the way.
That's what I was assuming. But I do want to say thank you to both of you too. And I think Russ had maybe popped in on. I'll say hello to Russ too, and just say thank you for everything. Because in addition to getting a chance to work on a release of a movie that had impacted me so much in my growing up, to have such a good time doing it too was a real treat. It was a lot of fun. It was work, but it was a lot of fun.
oh,
We feel the same way, Curtis.
it was a
I'm
lot
glad.
of fun for us. I wish we could do a release like we could continue doing work on Night of the Living Dead, every Night of the Living Dead home video release every year. But
Well,
that's certainly not practical.
yeah,
When's the schedule for the 8K version?
The 8K version.
I think much resolution will be lost on my vision quality. It's just like, there's no point. I don't see that well. But yeah, also I these days I'm doing more work for things on the channel than disc. I've been kind of like shifted more into production for the streaming channel, so my disc work is a lot less. So I'm glad that also fell into my lap at a time when I was doing a lot of it.
I'm sure the Museum of Modern Art's archive does not want to get that call that we want to go in there and get the negative again for the 8K version. But before we go, so we've had some Image 10, as many of the viewers know, has launched an online store, and we told everybody that those who bought from the store this past week, since the last podcast 2 weeks ago, we would put into a contest and we'd have Curtis pick a winner. So I have our customers here, just randomly, I've assigned them numbers. There's about a dozen people. So
Okay.
give me a number from 1 to 12 that you're thinking of.
Okay. 8.
Okay, and that would be...
Good answer. Good
8,
answer.
there you go. And 8 is Joshua Pruitt. So if he's not watching, I will be sending him this great, you're not going to be able, well, actually it did show up. We have a photo set that has been signed by 5 of the cast.
That's cool.
Including Gary, so there you go.
Nice.
That's a pretty fine little present.
Yeah, that's a nice.
Probably worth. My only question is, it's probably worth 3 times worth what you bought.
Yeah, it's at least worth. It's about 5 times worth anything in the store. But I actually have to clean out my closets too. They're just full of all this kind of stuff that we've and we keep making more. Like I didn't get to do it before, but we have these new T-shirts and in the store. We're going to be adding a few more to this, and people seem to really like the Ben one. I don't know if that's because he's, He's
He's
taking care of
banned.
business. He's taking care of business with his Winchester there, but people like that. But anyway, we thank the folks who have come to the store and have been buying as we slowly get that all happening and get it filled up with interesting products. So we should probably put the Criterion the Criterion release in there at some point. But no, people can get that from Amazon, and and as well as the
Yeah,
Criterion
we don't need to
site.
Yeah.
become a sub distributor of our own film. I don't think.
I mean, it'll clear out another space in my closet if we did. So people actually bought it from us. But so anyway, thanks, Curtis, for coming on and spending.
No, thank you for inviting me. Thanks
Such
for
a
inviting me.
pleasure to see
It was great to see you again,
Really.
Gary. Yeah, it was great to see you again.
You lit up my evening.
I'm glad. It's great to see you too, Gary. Be well. It was good to see you too, Jim. And with you, I'm going to continue to be in touch very soon for something I can discuss.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay. All right.
Well, thank you, and thanks
Thank you.
everybody for tuning in, and we'll see you. We will be posting information on that. So again, thanks everybody. See you soon.